The world's biggest oil lifeline is burning, not in flames visible from space, but in silent movement, in military deployments, in decisions that signal something far more serious than headlines suggest. The United States is deploying forces near Iran. And this is not routine, this is positioning. Strategic positioning, the kind that happens when the system is approaching a critical threshold. Because when military assets move at this scale, it's not just about presence, it's about preparation. Aircraft carriers, strike groups, air defense systems, these are not symbols, they are signals. Signals that escalation is no longer hypothetical, it is being calculated, measured, prepared for. Now think about this. A $20,000 drone can challenge a billion-dollar warship. A low-cost missile can force a high-cost interception. This is the David versus Goliath dynamic, redefining modern conflict. Cheap, precise, scalable tools against expensive, complex, and finite systems. And that's why this matters. Because when the United States deploys forces near Iran, it's not just a military move, it's a signal to markets, to allies, to adversaries, that the risk level has changed. And when risk levels change, the entire global system reacts. Now let's go deeper. The region in question is not just any region. It is one of the most strategically important areas in the world. The Middle East, and more specifically, the waters surrounding Iran. Because this region controls access to the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage through which nearly 20% of global oil flows. This is not just geography, this is leverage, because control over that choke point means influence over global energy markets. Now imagine the implications of increased military presence in this area. Tension rises, risk perception increases, shipping becomes uncertain, insurance costs spike, and oil prices begin to move. Not because supply has already been disrupted, but because it might be. This is how markets operate. They price in risk before it materializes. Now oil prices rise, and when oil rises, inflation follows. Higher fuel costs, higher transportation costs, higher production costs. This spreads across the entire economy. Now central banks react, raise interest rates, tighten monetary policy. But the system is already under pressure. Global debt exceeding $300 trillion, built on years of cheap money. Now that money is no longer cheap, and debt becomes harder to manage. This creates stress, across governments, across corporations, across households. Now move to financial markets. Stocks react to uncertainty. Volatility increases. Investors become cautious. Capital flows shift, because risk is rising. Now here's the contrast that defines this moment. On one side you have the United States, a global superpower, massive military capability, global financial dominance. On the other side, you have Iran, a regional power, using asymmetric strategies, missiles, drones, fast attack systems, lower cost, higher flexibility. This is the imbalance. And in that imbalance lies vulnerability, because high-cost systems struggle against persistent low-cost threats. Now multiply that across time. Across multiple incidents, this becomes a financial drain, not just operationally, but strategically. Now let's connect this to geopolitics. This is not happening in isolation. Global tensions are already elevated, multiple regions experiencing instability, competing powers positioning themselves. This creates a complex environment, where actions in one region affect others. Now bring in the financial layer, because this is where the real story unfolds. The global financial system is built on stability, stable energy prices, stable trade routes, stable currencies. But when stability is questioned, the system reacts. Now consider the hidden forces. The first is resource control. Oil is not just energy, it is leverage. Control over supply routes means influence over global markets. The second is financial dependence. The system depends on liquidity, cheap money, but central banks are tightening, removing that support. The third is technological asymmetry. Low-cost tools capable of high-impact disruption, changing the balance of power. Now combine these forces, geopolitical tension, financial vulnerability, technological disruption, and you get a system under strain. Now let's step back and look at history, because this pattern has happened before. Before major conflicts, there are signals, military positioning, economic adjustments, strategic alliances. Before World War I, alliances formed quietly. Before World War II, economies shifted before open conflict began. The signs were there, but not everyone recognized them. Now look at today. Different technology, different actors, but the same pattern. Preparation, positioning, escalation below the threshold of war. Now let's look forward. In the next 24 to 72 hours, developments may accelerate. Statements, military movements, market reactions, oil prices may spike, volatility may increase. Because uncertainty is high, but the deeper shift is long-term. Because once a system enters this phase, It doesn't easily return to stability. It adapts, or it breaks. Now consider the broader implications: higher energy prices, more volatile markets, increased geopolitical tension. This creates pressure on governments, on economies, on societies. This is not just a military situation. This is a systemic shift. Now here's the most important point. The global system is already fragile: high debt, tightening liquidity, geopolitical tension. And now, military escalation. This is the convergence, multiple pressures aligning at once. This is how crises begin. Now here's the final warning. The deployment of U.S. forces near Iran is not just a strategic move. It is a signal that the system is entering a more dangerous phase, where small events can trigger massive consequences, where escalation can move faster than expected. History shows us what happens next. When systems reach this point, they change, not always through immediate conflict, but through pressure, through instability, through shifts in power. The only question is this: are we witnessing a precautionary deployment, or the early stages of a larger conflict that will redefine global power, energy markets, and financial systems for years to come?